July 16, 1969. After Mercury, Gemini, 4 manned Apollo flights, triumphs, tragedy, and years of hard work from thousands of Americans, Apollo 11 was set to launch on its simply stated but monumental mission: perform a manned lunar landing and return. At 9:32 a.m., the 36-story Saturn V rocket used its 7.5 million pounds of thrust to propel astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins into space and history.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program.
3 days later, Armstrong and Aldrin climbed into the lunar module Eagle to attempt the first ever landing on the moon's surface. Collins, who stayed behind on the command module Columbia, called Eagle the weirdest looking contraption I have ever seen in the sky. During the final seconds of Eagle's descent, with computer alarms sounding and fuel running dangerously low, Armstrong manually took control of the ship and steered clear of boulders that littered the landing site. On July 20, 1969, Armstrong finally radioed back to an anxious Earth.
Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.
6 hours later, Armstrong stepped off the Eagle's ladder onto the lunar surface.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Aldrin joined him on the moon about 15 minutes later. The astronauts spent 2.5 hours collecting soil samples, rocks, setting up experiments, and photographing the surface from a vantage point considered impossible less than a decade earlier. Millions around the world watched on live TV. The crew made a triumphant return to Earth 4 days later with a splashdown in the Pacific Ocean. This was no longer the stuff of science fiction. It was fact. Men from Earth had visited another world and returned.
Mythbusters, was the moon landing a hoax?
Yep, the team are tackling the tallest tale of all. Did NASA fake the Apollo moon mission?
That's 100% wacky right there.
Adam and Jamie first focus on the photos.
Behold our moon landing set.
Do these stills prove Neil Armstrong took his small step in a studio?
Taking the shot.
Then they investigate the myth that to fabricate the classic look of lunar landings, NASA simply slowed down the film. And finally, Cary Grant and Tori,
oh my God, these are all vacuum chambers?
Take on claims that in a vacuum, flags don't flap and foots don't print. 1969. The world watched, wondered, and worried as 3 brave astronauts headed for the moon.
Well, Houston, thrusters go. All engines, you're looking good.
Then 5 days later came that extraordinary moment in time.
The Eagle has landed.
When Neil Armstrong took those first tentative extraterrestrial steps.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
What do you think?
Works for me.
Shadows are totally parallel.
And that is what the myth proponents say the NASA photo should look like. Instead, you can see the rock and landing module shadows are in different planes.
Now we need to figure out what it would take to make them not parallel.
Yeah, let's play with the topography underneath it and see what we can get. Conspiracy theorists say there's only one explanation for this. 2 light sources. And since there's only one light source on the moon, and that's the sun,
That's really kicking it forward.
this has to be shot in a studio. We're positing that it's the topography of the moon causing these shadows of the rocks to look like they're not parallel, when in fact they are, and that's what we're trying to imitate here.
To test Jamie's hypothesis that the mythical fill-in light is simply sunlight bouncing back off the moon's surface, the guys black out the set.
Let's see. There it is.
Oh, there you go. He's standing full on in the shadow, and you'd think you wouldn't be able to see him. He'd be dark, but he's not. He's in bright as day.
The myth here is that you would not be able to see this astronaut this clearly unless there was a secondary fill light illuminating him. Because he's in the shadow and there's only one light source on the moon, he would by definition be black. Our photo here proves just the opposite. That with a single light source, with the surface of the same reflectivity as the moon, our astronaut is clearly visible, busting that myth.
Standing vertical.
But did Buzz Aldrin really make such an impression on the moon? To find out if moon boots make boot prints, Tori's borrowed the real deal.
Step per man. 1 giant leap per man.
Similar to lunar dust in the fact that each particle is very sharp. Dirt on Earth has been weathered, so it's very smooth. So this is as close to lunar dust as we can get.
Yeah! Take that!
Yeah! It works! In your face, conspiracy theorists!
Yep, it really does work.
Moon landing 1, conspiracy theorists 0.
Without drag or friction from the air, the momentum of Grant's planting action lasts for a surprising amount of time.
So that proves you don't need wind in order to move the flag in a vacuum.
So unless someone finds a shot of the flag flapping without an astronaut manipulating the flagpole, it's Mythbusters.
Adam was walking or running. He was experiencing the exact same thing that Neil Armstrong would have on the moon. It was 1/6 Earth's gravity. But being here on this plane in microgravity and watching him, it's totally different. Nothing really compares to what we saw here on this plane, so as far as I'm concerned, they went to the moon.